Okay, I think we have quite a good number of persons. We can start from here. Others will join in along the line, right? So, first we'll be talking about what happened yesterday. We all know yesterday we had the CPI news that came out, and it came out woefully for the dollar, right? It came out very, very poor for the dollar. So, I was checking the dollar against the basket of other currency. We could see that the dollar is even currently the weakest currency. It fell about 0.40%, right? It fell about 0.40% at the opening of today. So it had been a very bad run for the dollar yesterday because of that negative news on the FOMC, and on the CPI rather, and I mean everything came out negative. It's not like other CPIs where you have some come out positive and then some come out negative. This one, you had everything come out very, very negative. So we had this downward trend on this thing. So aside the USD, we had a couple of other news that came out yesterday. We had news on NZD, NZDS. We had news on I think the news on NZD actually gave NZD a very good boost because they had their official bank rate statement, right? Then they also have their cash rates, their official cash rate. So their official cash rate was unchanged. Then their bank statement was a news. It was a statement, right? It was more of a speech. So I think that actually came out in favor. It was actually hawkish for the New Zealand dollar, right? So the New Zealand dollar holds rates and the USD breaks out. So wait, okay, so official bank statement rates remained unchanged. Right, so the fact that they didn't change anything on their banks on their official rate actually gave a little bit of boost. Not that the New Zealand dollar was that great, but I think that gave for the fact that it didn't drop below what it was expected, right? They just went at par with what they had before. So I think that still gave the New Zealand dollar stability. So on the AUD zone, we had a speech from Low. So Low spoke on their reserve. On their reserve bank, right? So that's a Reserve Bank of Australia. So there was a speech from him, and that also affected this and the AUD. So AUD also gained strength just behind the New Zealand dollar. Just behind the New Zealand dollar. Then we had GBP close to that. There was a speech from Bailey yesterday. Right, there was a speech from Bailey yesterday. So if you want to get what this news, you could just click on the drop down here. So the governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia was actually talking about was that they're going to be reviewing their monetary policy. Right, bank will be reviewing the bank will be reviewing its monetary policy, and then I think that actually gave a boost. That review gave a boost to the Australian dollar. But on the GBP zone, they talked about rising rates. Which have so I think mostly the GBP and the USD are looking at further increasing their interest rates, right? Further increasing their interest rate, and I think that would also still play out again based on the speech that came out yesterday. So Bank of England Bailey, rising rates have created stress on financial system. So I think they've actually been increasing interest rate for a while, and there's been a stress. But with the way things are going, I don't think they'll still be able to ease up on the interest rate. I still think there might be further increase on interest rates for now, right? I still think it might be that. That's just my own fundamental analysis on that, though. So for the USD, you could see three of them, both the CPI MM and then the CPI, the monthly CPI, the yearly, everything came out. Even core CPI also came out negative. All this came out negative for the dollar, and we could see how that played out yesterday in the market. I don't know if you were not in the market yesterday and you didn't trade CPI, you probably must have missed a lot. Right, you probably must have missed a lot. So for the Canadian dollar, we had their Bank of Canada. They gave their monetary policy yesterday. I think yesterday was a majorly a day for rolling out monetary policy and statements, rate statements, right? So for Canada, they are saying that there is a sentiment as to if they are going to be true with raising their interest rate, but I think they are looking at increasing. Bank of Canada raises rates to 5%, so there's been a further increase of interest rate from the Canadian zone. And how did that affect Canada? I think that didn't still turn out so well because the Canadian dollar is still a bit weak, just closely behind the GBP, right? Just closely behind the GBP, right? So they increased their interest rate by 5%, right? By 5%. So I think, like I said, major economies at this point they are dealing with inflation, and I think the best way to actually curb this inflation is by utilizing increase in interest rates. But there is a limit to which you keep increasing interest rates, right? Because the more you keep increasing interest rates, the more or the most likely your economy is looking at falling into possible recession, right? Most looking likely it falls into possible recession. So you also need to be very careful when you're increasing interest rates, right? So that being said, we had a couple of news from the Canadian zone, their monetary policy, their rate statements, then their overnight rates, all these. I think they left their overnight rates unchanged. Then we also had the Bank of Canada press conference that came out yesterday too. So all that gave sentiment on the card, but I don't think they did so well in increasing or boosting the strength of the Canadian dollar. Then lastly, we had by 6 p.m. we had the 10 years bond auction, right? The 10 years bond auction. So this came out more like people were actually expecting more from the 10 years bond auction, but it came out just almost at par with what the previous this thing was, just almost at par with what the previous one was. So, and like I said, people were expecting so much from the 10 years bond auction, but that didn't play out. So for today, well, today we also have a couple of high impact and medium impact news. Starting from GBP. For GBP, we had their GDP, that's their gross domestic product. It came out and it came out positive. So gross domestic products came out positive for the GBP, and if you check the chart this morning, GBP actually gained a little bit of boost. I think that's what pushed the GBP up to this point, because yesterday when I checked, the GBP was also not doing so. It wasn't doing so great to say, but I think that gave it a little bit of strength. So that would also reflect on the chart by the time we are looking at the chart. Right. So for today, we also have a couple of high impact news and medium impact news, and one medium impact news from the dollar. Today is Thursday, so we have core PPI. So this is yesterday we looked at consumer price index. Today we'll be looking at producers price index, right? Producers price index. So for producers price index, you're looking at what it costs to it costs to actually produce in the US, right? So that also sends sentiment around investors, and that also pushes the market, just in like as a CPI, as the way consumer price index pushes the market. You also have that effect from producers price index, right? So you have core PPI, and then you have PPI. Then you also have unemployment claims coming out today. That's also another powerful news that you should look out for. Unemployment claims. So unemployment claims has to do with the number of unemployed persons in the US, and of course we are expecting that the number should okay, though they're saying forecast is that the number should increase, right? So unemployed persons, they're saying forecast is that the number should increase, but most likely we should expect a lower number for you to get a good economy, for you to get good sentiment, right? So it simply means the number of unemployed persons at this point is 248,000, right? Number of unemployed person. But I think because of the way the US economy is at this point, speculation is that the number of unemployed persons might actually increase, but let's just hope it doesn't. But and if it does, then you should see a further weakening in the dollar. But if the number of unemployed persons drop, right? If the number of unemployed person drop, that means definitely you should get positive sentiment around the dollar, giving the dollar strength. So by that will be rounding off the dollar with the FOMC member Waller will be speaking by 11:45 p.m. today. So there's a whole lot of activity on the dollar. So you're looking out for US stocks, you're looking at US pairs, and you're looking at gold also. Those should actually gain strength, right? Gold should actually gain strength, right? So let's quickly just delve into the chart. Let's delve into the chart. All right, so you could see the effect looking at let's look at dollar index first. Let's look at dollar index. So from dollar index, we could get a clear view as to what happened across other dollar pair. So I'm mostly going to be looking at dollar pair since we have more of the high impact news and more of the high impact news coming out from the dollar. So we're going to be looking at the dollar pair. We'll look at indices, and then we'll also look at gold to round off today's morning analysis. So you could see if you put your dollar index on a daily time frame, you could clearly see how far CPI dropped the dollar yesterday. So that dropped roughly around from yesterday morning. We had a drop of roughly around 311 pips, right? 311 pips. So that's quite a lot for an instrument to drop in one day, right? So 311 pip drop on the dollar. So if you had followed this, this is on a daily time frame rather. Sorry, let's go to a 1 hour time frame. Let's go to a 1 hour time frame and let's do that again. So this is, yes, sorry. So it dropped roughly around 103 pip rather, 103 pip. 103 pip yesterday. So from the high points yesterday down to where it stopped, that yesterday dropped about 103 pip, right? So and you could see currently, I think it has gotten to a support zone. Let's go to a higher time frame to check the next. Okay, yes. So it has gotten to a support zone. You see how I had to shrink my chart all the way. I had to go to a daily time frame to get the next support because I couldn't really find that on a 4-hour time frame. So I had to go to a daily time frame to get the next support zone. So putting your horizontal line at the next support zone, and then let's go back to a 1 hour time frame. So you could see, I think there's still room for price to actually drag down to this point, except there is a new support being formed at this point, because I couldn't find any other support aside these ones that I just marked. Now let's go back to our daily time frame to see that. Okay, so except there is, okay, there was a support before here which price actually broke. There was a support before here which price actually broke, and then this is the next notable support. So you can see clearly here that after price broke below this support, right, the previous candle broke below that support on a daily time frame, so it's heading straight to this next notable support around here. So most likely you might still see there might still be room for price to drag to this point technically, except a new support is now formed at that point. Except a new support is formed at that point. But of course, we're expecting a lot of sentiment around the dollar, and US can be very tricky sometimes. So let's just hope we have a ton of events, and at least the sentiment around the dollar pushes or gives strength to the dollar at this point in time. But if not, you might see prices trail down to this support zone before bouncing back up. You might see price trail down to this support zone before bouncing back up. And it's been quite a terrible month for the dollar per se, because you could clearly see this downtrend, right? You could clearly see this downtrend, and that's because the dollar has been, I think, since the beginning of this month, after the whole strengthening of the dollar from last month, where we had the debt ceiling, the debt ceiling and everything. So all that gave positive this into the dollar, and we had this increase, debt ceiling increase, which range, because they started talking about the debt ceiling a month before, right? So we had that in March, April and May. We had the dollar actually push up. Then we had April and May. This is April. We had price actually push up. Also in May, we had that push up. Then June, we started seeing this decline in the dollar, right? So heading to this support, from this support, I most likely wouldn't be seeing any further decline of the dollar from this point. So we would expect that price should actually push up from there. So for this morning, what I'd be expecting is, if price is able to, because you could see that now it's struggling around this point, right? It's struggling around this point. So it's mostly clear if you're going to be taking a trade on the dollar index on USD-IDX, it's mostly clear that if price is able to break below these points here, where price is currently struggling at, because you could see there is this last candle is having a whole lot of rejection on it. This last candle is having a whole lot of rejection on it. Though you have your bearish engulfing, right? You have your bearish engulfing, but it's not at any notable resistance, right? It's not at any. So you should get your bearish engulfing at a resistance point before you can now say, okay, this would actually take effect in the market. So since it's not at any notable resistance, I most likely wouldn't be paying so much attention to it, right? I'd pay attention to it, but I wouldn't be paying so much attention to it. So I'd want to go in for a sell if price is able to break below this point at 100 points. So I think dollar index has fallen below. If the dollar index breaks below this point, it would have fallen below the $100 mark, right? The $100 mark, which is been a very poor turn for the dollar for in a long while. It's been a long time since the dollar fell $100 against other currency, right? So we're looking at taking a sell should price break below here and riding it up to the next notable support at 99.694. Right, so you're taking your sell if price breaks below this point, right? So for the dollar index, because of the news, technically I most likely will be looking out for a sell, but fundamentally, because I can't really tell in what direction these policies makers would be taking, right? I can't really tell what direction the policy makers will be taking. I most likely would want to just hold on, right? So the best point would be to trade technically. So trading technically will be taking a sell. So technically, my preference would most likely be a sell because I still see the dollar getting to this support zone, right? Technically. So if price gets to this point, I'd go in for a sell. Breaks below this point, I'll go in for a sell down to this point. But if that doesn't happen, then most likely you get a rejection, and then the dollar tries to cover up at least some of the losses it made yesterday, right? So if this candle closes bullish, then you should know that then that a rejection is about to start, is about to take point. So you get a retracement from this point up to this resistance point, because I marked out this point as a resistance point on my daily time frame here. Okay, so you could still see that resistance point somewhere around here. There is a lighter one here, and then there is another one here. Right. So as trader, you should be able to spot this support and resistance zone by just looking at the chart. That's what you should strive at. Spot this support and resistance zone by just looking at the chart. So if there's a rejection from this point, you most likely will want to go in for a buy, right? That's waiting for this candle to close. You most likely will want to go in for a buy up to this point. Right, so it's in two scenarios. So if you're a safe trader, if you're a very cautious trader, you might be worried about what you want to do on the dollar index, right? You might be worried about what you want to do on the dollar index. So going for a sell if price breaks below this point, which is most likely my preference, I would want to just stick out for a sell, expecting that the price comes to settle fully on this support before you now have a very good rejection from there. But if that doesn't play out, then you know that retracement started off early, and this point would have made a new support point. This point would have made a new support point. So that would form an untested support where price just tested once, right? So price just formed the support at a particular point. So that place is an untested support, and it's not since it's an untested support, it's not very strong. Price would, if price comes all the way back down, it most likely would still break it, right? So this is if price is rejected at this point, so you would be getting a new untested support at around this point. And if that plays out, you most likely will be sticking out your neck for a buy, especially with, and there's one thing I keep saying, that anytime there is fundamental, especially high impact news coming out around a particular currency, you most likely would see that currency gain a little bit of boost based on sentiment, right? People might actually want to play along with it sentimentally, right? Expecting that, okay, since there is a policy coming out today, we would expect that this should gain strength based on what the policymaker is going to be saying. But in the scenario, you now get a clear direction when such policymaker comes out and then what he or she is saying is not favorable to that particular currency, right? That's when you now have a clear-cutted direction, right? So that being said, let's quickly look at other dollar pair. Let's look at GBP USD. So currently GBP USD is actually the strongest currency. GBP is actually the strongest pair, right? It's actually the strongest pair. Let's go back to our currency strength meter. Let's go back to our currency strength meter. So on currency strength meter, let's go back to currency strength meter. Okay, so on currency strength meter, okay, so sorry, NZD is the strongest, but you have GBP being stronger than the USD. USD was, when we checked it earlier on, USD was the weakest currency, right? So, but it has gone way above the JPY, which has fallen short of the US dollar. So I still expect that in few hours time, the dollar should creep up and still gain more strength, at least far above the euro. Since we're not expecting any news on the euro, neither we're expecting any news on GBP and CAD, I expect that the dollar should creep up and at least go stronger than these three currency pairs here, right? So I've not really checked out what's going on the CHF, but I know for a fact that we are not expecting any news on CHF also. So most likely CHF might also drop in strength based on fundamentals coming out for today. So gradually you might see the USD still pick up strength since that this has started. And if you look at Euro USD, right? If you look at Euro USD, you could see that GBP USD rather, you could see that price has actually gotten to a resistance point, right? So from this resistance point, I'm expecting a rejection, right? So you could see this current candle forming now. You could see a lot of sell pressure from this candle currently forming now. You could see this rejection candle. This tail here serves as a rejection. It simply means price buyers are trying to push price up, but I think sellers are having their way in the market now. And if you're adding your RSI or stochastic, you know that price has gotten to an overbought region. Let's quickly add that our RSI or stochastic, those are oscillators. So let's look at okay, let's use stochastic. Looking at stochastic, okay, so stochastic price actually got to the overbought region and it's currently coming back down. So I expect that price should still fall all the way to 20, right, on stochastic. And let's also use RSI to confirm what we are already seeing. Right, let's use RSI. So RSI is also an oscillator, relative strength index. Adding that also. So same thing is also playing out on the RSI. Price has gotten towards your towards 70, right? And I expect that it should still drop from there back to 30. It should drop from there back to 30, right? So I think going in for a further buy on GBP USD at this point in time, going in for a further buy on GBP USD at this point in time might not be a good thing to do, or might not be a wise thing to do rather, right? So I would want to wait for price to actually break above this resistance to be sure that the buy or the weakness of the dollar will still push GBP USD up, right? Will still push GBP USD up. So if you're doing that, let's go to a higher time frame to get the next notable resistance. So even on a daily time frame, okay, looking at it on a daily time frame, having to shrink my chart, you could see that point, you could see clearly that is a good resistance point for price, and the next notable resistance is somewhere around here, right? Somewhere around here, bringing this down a little. So this is the next notable resistance, somewhere around here. Let me take out every other line from my chart so you'll be able to see this clearly. Right. So looking at this is the next notable resistance. So if price is able to break above here, it most likely will be going straight to this point. But like I said, we don't have news on GBP. What we have is news on USD. So I expect that. And of course, the dollar has actually lost quite a lot of gains yesterday. So I'm still expecting that the dollar should at least try to recover some of the gains for today, right? I'm expecting that the dollar should try to recover some of its gains for today. So my preference on this particular instrument would most likely be sell, but a sell if price doesn't go above this point. So we'll be looking at that in most likely, let's go to a 1 hour time frame. Yeah. So on a 1 hour time frame, if price is not able to break above these points, I most likely will be going in for a sell, bringing taking my profits down here. I most likely will be going for a sell, taking my profit down here, right? Following the fundamental. Right? I'd like to ride the fundamental, taking my profit here. So I'm going for a sell. Are going for a sell. If you look closely, there is a little bit of a support at around here. So I'm going for a sell below price level 1.29844. Right, 1.29844. So we're going for a sell. If price breaks below that point, ride it up until price level 1.29131. Right, riding along that line. But if price, right, if the sentiment around the dollar is not strong enough to push price down, then you most likely would want to stick in for a buy, right? Going in for a buy if price breaks above price level 1.30338, right? If price goes above here, so then you most likely will be looking in for a buy. Price goes above here, you most likely will be looking in for a buy up until the next resistance at price level 1.31772. 1.31772. So that's my take for GBP USD. So let's look at Euro USD also. I think same thing also played out on Euro USD. You could see those massive candles on a daily time frame. Let me expand my charts, right? So you could see those massive candle on a daily time frame. But like I said, there's also a rejection point somewhat around here where price is currently forming, right? Price is currently forming here, and there's been a rejection telling you that the sellers are there's a lot of seller pressure in the market. There's a lot of bearish pressure in the market at this point in time. So I still expect that if the sentiment around the USD continues, then you might see a little bit of retracement, at least up until this point, trying to recover the losses that the dollar made yesterday as a result of the CPI. So same thing, I'd want to go in for a sell if price is able to break below this point where price ranged this morning. So you could see there was a little bit of a range this morning. So if price is able to break below this point, I'm going for a sell at price level 1.11277, right? I'm going for a sell at price level 1.1127 down to this point here at price level 1.10353, right? So going for a sell from anywhere within this region, anywhere within this region. So price level, once price is able to break below 1.11277, right, I'm going for a sell, taking my profit at price level 1.10353, right? So but if sentiments around the dollar is not enough to push the dollar down, right, you most likely would go in for a buy. So once price is able to break, like I said, price range this morning. So the best way to trade a ranging market is by trading the breakout. So breakout can either be bearish or bullish. So if you are getting a bearish breakout, that's a sell breakout, you're looking at entering a sell at this point that I've given, right? But if you most likely get a bullish breakout, you'd want to go in for a buy at above price level 1.11633, right? Don't forget, these entries are not where you should take your this point is not where you should take your entry point. I'm saying if price breaks above it, so you could pick a figure above that particular point, right, to ensure that price doesn't, because those points are resistance points and support points. So of course it wouldn't be smart for you to take your price on a resistance or on a support. So you want to take your entries if price breaks above that resistance or if price breaks below that support, right? So if you're looking in for a buy, you most likely would want to be checking for a good take profit point, and a good take profit point, we can't see that on a daily time frame. Let's go to a weekly time frame to see if we'll get the next. Okay, so we got another resistance point at on a weekly time frame, but you could, because this is a weekly time frame, that will mean that it's very, very far, right? It's very, very, very far. So I would just want to take my profit, right? Target half of that take this is where the next resistance is on a weekly time frame, because we didn't get anything on a daily time frame, right? We didn't get anything on a daily time frame and on a 4-hour time frame. So I had to go up until a weekly time frame, and that's a whole lot for you to be for you to put as your intraday take profit. So I'd want to slash that into two, right? Most likely just targets what's best case scenario, I just target roughly around 100 pip, right? Roughly around the 100 pip, targeting roughly around the 100 pip, you should have your take profit somewhere around here. Okay, so let's see how many pip is this in total from year to year. That's roughly around 300 pip, right? That's 328 pip. So if I'm targeting 100 pip, that should bring my take profit somewhere around here. So somewhere around here would be my take profit. That would be very close on a weekly time frame, but if you go to a daily time frame, you would see that gap clearly, right? So this is it. So if I'm going in for, can you see? So if I'm going in for a buy, right, I'm going to go in for a buy if price breaks above this my resistance point. All right, so I'm going to be going in for a buy if price breaks above this my resistance point, and then my take profit will be somewhat around price level 1.12355. 1.13255. So a buy if price breaks above 1.11633, and then take profit at 1.12355. Right. So that's just my entries for Euro USD. Right. That I hope you're getting a hang of this analysis, because that's the most important thing, right? That's the most important thing, right? So let's look at USD JPY. Let's look at USD JPY. So same thing also played out on the USD versus the Japanese yen, right? So, and for the fact that the Japanese yen, you had more fall on the on the US Japanese yen, because I think the JPY has actually been strong of recent, right? There've been this a little bit of boost on the JPY since the beginning of this month. Right, since the beginning of this month, they've been opening up majority of their economy after the whole saga with the COVID-19. They've been opening up major aspect of their economy fully now. So, and you know, the JPY is a producing economy, right? So plus or minus, they still keep gaining strength regardless of whatever is happening around other economies, because they are majorly into production. The US is a service-based economy. They do more of providing service, healthcare, education, insurance, banking, and all of that, right? So they are more of a service-based economy. Why the JPY has more of a production-based economy, right? That's why over time they keep gaining strength. So it was as a result of this their COVID-19 saga that the JPY actually lost a whole lot of strength, right? So before now, as at last year, a year ago, and 2 years ago, JPY used to be the top contender, right? They used to be the top contender. Yeah, they were always strong. The JPY was always strong, regardless of whatever is happening in other economy. JPY was always strong, right? So I think they might be getting back to that particular niche again, but well, it's too early to tell. But that's just what I feel for the JPY. So you saw this decline and further decline again as a result of the CPI yesterday. But you could see that price has also got into a support zone here. At least there should be more of a relax for price. You know, price doesn't just fall forever. Even if it's on a downtrend, you should get a little bit of easing up for yeah, making room for retracement, at least before price now continues in the actual direction at which it is going in, right? So you have price approach this support here. So I most likely wouldn't want to jump in for a further sell on USD JPY. I most likely wouldn't want to go in for a further sell on USD JPY. And you could see that price had ranged from yesterday night up until this morning in sentiments of the PPI coming out today after the major fall from CPI yesterday. So what I'd advise is you wait for a breakout also, because this is also a ranging market. You most likely would make good money if you're trading the breakout of this instrument instead of trading in between this zone, right? Instead of trading in between this zone, yeah, you most likely would want to wait for a breakout. So wait if price breaks above or breaks below. So in my own suggestion, I actually feel price should break above, right, like I said. There's no news coming out on the JPY for today, and we are already way past the Asian session, right? So by the time the US session opens up, I think the strength button should be passed to the dollar. We're no longer the Asian zone the Asian market has closed. We are currently in the New York session, and then by 2:30 we are currently in the London session, and then by 2:30 the New York session should open, and that should give a boost to the dollar. So that's why the fact that price is actually selling now. You could see that price has been rejected here once and then rejected here again twice, right? So I expect that should still play out again. So I'd want to go in for a buy limit at this point here, right? I want to go in for a buy limit. If price gets to this point, I go in for a buy, expecting a rejection from this point, right? Expecting a rejection from this point. Of course, yeah, it will be a good point for my stop loss. You could put your stop loss few pips below that point, but going for a buy if price gets to this point. Or if you're jumping in early, you can go in for an instant buy now, expecting that price would. Though, if you're going in for an instant buy, if you're using this strategy, you should expect that you would see your account, right, trade on negative for a while, because price would still have to travel down to these supports to test it before getting rejected. So if you want to key in early early into the trade, you would want to, if you're going in early, just know that you're going to be getting a little bit of a drawdown before price reverses and pushes you back into profit. So it's your choice. You might decide to wait using a sell limit, just rightly a buy limit rather. You might want to just wait and use a buy limit. I set my buy limit at around this point. So if price triggers my buy limit, it goes down to the support and then starts pushing up, which should put me in profit. Of course, my take profit to be at the before the next resistance at the top, right, at price level 138.823. 138.823. 138.823. That would be my take profit point. And of course, if the sentiment around the dollar is very strong, if most of those news comes out in favor of the dollar, you should get price break way above this resistance, right? So covering up the effect of CPI from yesterday. But let's just keep our fingers crossed to see what PPI would do today. So let's look at another dollar pair. So let's look at USD CHF too. Right, let's look at USD CHF. For USD CHF, we have same thing, a ranging market. Same thing, a ranging market. We had a ranging market after the effect of the CPI yesterday. So most likely, for those that would have actually keyed in early, you most likely would have entered a buy from this rejection point here, expecting that sentiment around the dollar should push USD CHF up. Right, should have pushed USD CHF up. Like I said, we are way past the Asian session, right? So we're expecting that the power mantle should be moved from the UK to the USD by the time 2:30 the New York market opens, right? So I most likely would want to go in for a buy, but since I didn't key into that buy from the lowest point here of the chart, I'd want to go in for a buy if price breaks above here. I'd want to go in for a buy if price breaks above the previous high, right, which is somewhat around there. So if price breaks above 0.86727, if price breaks above there, I'm going for a buy up to the next resistance point at around here. So but to be sure, I want to be sure that there is no other resistance before that notable one. On the 4 hours, I couldn't find any. On a daily time frame also, I couldn't find any. On a weekly time frame too, I still couldn't find any. So that's the next notable resistance. So there's a whole lot of opportunity move there. So I'm going for a buy if price is able to break above here up until this resistance point at price level 0.87623. Right. So that'll be giving me roughly around how many pips? I just want to be sure. All right. So that'll be giving me roughly around 92 pips, right? Roughly around 92 pips. So like this USD CHF, so you need good lot size for you to actually make something tangible from USD CHF, right? USD CHF. So we'd also look at USD CAD also. Let's look at USD CAD also. I think majorly you have more of the same formation on most of the US pair, right? Most of the US pair, because of the sentiment coming out on, because of the news coming out on PPI today. Right, so looking at this, price has actually got into this support zone, right? This is on a 15 minutes time frame. Let's go to a 1 hour time frame, right? So I'm still looking at price hitting, because there was a very strong rejection even from the CPI. There was a very strong rejection at around this point. So let's check. let's check why that point was a very strong rejection point for price. And of course, I found it. This is why that point was a very strong rejection for price, despite the fact that we had CPI yesterday, because that point had been a rejection for price around the 22nd of June. That also played out on at around that was 2022. That was last year, June 2022, last year. And then we had that rejection also play out somewhat in between July and September last year. You had that. So at that point, that point was serving as a resistance for price, but now it's currently serving as a support. That point was serving as a resistance for price, but now it's currently serving as a support. And that's why even the CPI couldn't, and it served as a resistance for price twice. I'm sure there are more points where price couldn't break above that point, but I think these two is the most notable ones that we could see at the moment. So, and that's why even the CPI couldn't break it below that point. So since CPI couldn't bring price below that point, I expect a rejection from that particular level, right? I expect a rejection from that particular level. So I most likely will be going in using a buy limit also, right? A buy limit close to that support zone. I most likely will be going for a buy limit close to that support zone. So if price hits here, I expect that price should be rejected, pushing back up to this resistance, at least somewhat around here. So a buy limit at the support, then taking my take profit at price level 1.31923. 1.31923. I take my profit at around there. And of course, if sentiment around the dollar is strong enough to still break above that resistance, you can still ride it down to the next resistance point, which is somewhat around here, right? Which is somewhat around here. So that will be at price level 1.32213, right? 1.32312. So of course, like I said, today's market is mostly going to be determined by policymakers, and if it doesn't go in favor of the dollar, you most likely will be seeing a further sell on most of the USD pair, right? So you just need to be very prepared. So in as much as you're looking at putting your buy entries, you also need to be able to cut your losses in time should the policies comes out and doesn't fall in favor of the dollar, right? Just cut out your losses and follow the trend. Always ensure that you're following the market trend, right? Always ensure that you're following the market trend. So you need to be at alert, because today is fundamental news. So you need to be very much at alert. You don't just place your trades and go away, especially on fundamental days. You can do that on days where the market is trading technically, but on fundamental days, it's advisable you are close to your chart, right? It's advisable you're close to your chart. So let's look at this. Let's look at gold, right? Let's look at gold also. Gold also gained as a result of the CPI yesterday. So you had this very, very good bullish run from gold yesterday, very, very solid bullish run from gold yesterday, and then it eased up. It just eased up. And then we had, of course, a range throughout yesterday night. Price kept ranging in between this point, right? It broke above here and then started ranging in between this point. So I'd like also to find out why price stopped here and couldn't go above that point. So of course, most likely there was a rejection at around that point, but we can't see that on a 1 hour time frame. So we have to go to a 4 hours. Yes, on the 4 hour time frame, you could clearly see that rejection point, right? It was that point has been a massive rejection for price. So it's not just once. So this is one. If you're counting it, it's quite a lot though. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not even 4. 1, 2. It came 4, 5, 6, roughly around 6 times. So price has tested that region roughly around 6 times, and then it's in that it's in the neighborhood again, right? It's at around that region again. So most likely that's why we had that rejection and a halt of the CPI impacts on gold, right? So I expect a major fall from this point, right? I expect a major fall. Of course, the gold is just a reactive instrument to the dollar. So it's going to go in the direction at which, the opposite direction at which the dollar is going. And if you're looking at it, putting your RSI, you can see that price has gone above the overbought region on your RSI. It has gone above your overbought region on the RSI. So I expect that price should come below right? For at least sellers should get more pressure in the market now. So if you're looking at it on the RSI, that would ensure that price comes below my 70 and falls all the way back to 30, right? So you could look at it, but if you're using RSI, you most likely wouldn't be keen into that move early enough, right? So best you just trade technically, best you just trade based on the candlestick formation. So if price breaks below, of course, my preference on gold would most likely be a sell. Will most likely be a sell. So if price trades below price level 1952.58, 1952.58, just take your sell down to the next support zone, right? Down to the next notable support at around price level 1.931.87, right? So somewhere you could take your profit before that point, but this is the next notable support. Of course, like I said, you're not putting your take profit and your entries on your support or resistance zone. You should be somewhat below that point, right? Or somewhat above that point to ensure that price actually hits your take profit before getting to the support, and ensure that when you put in your entries, right, you're not putting your entries on your support zone. Right, and you're not putting your entries on a support zone. You want to take your entries a little bit above that point, right? You want to take your entries a little bit above that point or below that point, right, as the case may be. So that's it for gold. That's it for gold. So let's look at some of the the US index, right? We've looked at how many instruments: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've looked at gold, 6. Let's look at some of the dollar. Let's look at some of the dollar index, or the dollar indices rather. So the US indices, looking at the US indices, we had US indices actually gain. This is on, let's look at it on a daily time frame. We had mixed sentiments, right? After CPI came out yesterday, we had mixed sentiment on the likes of US 100, right? So we had this major push up as a result of the CPI. Then we had push down on US 100, right? So for today, I think let's look at it on a higher time frame also to check technically. Okay, I think there is a whole lot of lines on my chart. Let me take out all of this so that we can do a fresh analysis. Okay, perfect. So let's look at it on a higher time frame. On a higher time frame, you see price actually broke above this support zone as a result of the CPI yesterday. We had this push down on US 100 yesterday, trying to recover some of the gains, right? But I think that didn't last. So for today, I still expect that I'm trying to get the next notable resistance to see if price is very close to that point, or if there's still room for price to travel further. Okay, so price is currently at around this point here, right? Okay, let me zoom in a little bit so we could get, okay. So price has traveled way above. Okay, so on a weekly time frame, we're able to get the next, on a weekly time frame, we're able to get the next notable resistance somewhat around here for US 100, somewhat around there for US 100. So most likely it's saying technically you're looking at price still pushing up a little bit down to the up to the resistance there. So which is still very far, right? So that's on a weekly time frame. So most likely would be. So the way price is at this point, let me see, there was a rejection at around here. Does that correlate with where the current market price is now? No, that's below the current market price. So price has broken above here. So okay, so price has actually broken above the this resistance point, and it's heading to the next resistance at the top. So like I said, if it comes out positive, of course, stocks would actually react to the dollar. If it comes out positive for the dollar, I don't think so. What we would actually be looking out is what we would actually be seeing would be a new weak resistance at this point here, right? Because you can see that there've been shorter candles. You're getting more of a short candles in reaction to the PPI coming out today, right? So most likely what you might be getting, price might not travel all the way to the next resistance at this point here, at least, right? So you most likely will be getting a weak resistance in between these points, because the next resistance is actually very far. So if, except the news comes out against the dollar, then that's when you see price peak all the way to this resistance point. But if that's not the case, at least sentiments this morning on the dollar should give this particular instrument a new weak resistance, right? Should give this instrument a new weak resistance. And you can see that the last candle, 1, 2, 3, 4 candles, the last 1, 2, 3, 4 hours ago, we had an inverted hammer, right, at at the high point, the previous high point of the chart, right? And so price is still struggling at around this point here. Price is still struggling at around this point. So should you you most likely would want to go in for a buy if price now breaks above that point, right? If price now breaks above that point, like I said, you've been getting short candles, and most likely a rejection is bound to play out at around that point, bringing price down. So but what the safest bet would be to have your two preference on this particular instrument. If price goes above here, right, you'd most likely would want to go in for a buy at above price level 1.5531.63, right? 5531.63, 15531.6 for a buy. If price breaks above that point, then targeting your next take profit at 15708.33. 15708.33. You take your profit at around that point. But should the dollar come out, should the news come out positive for the dollar, you'd want to take your sell, right? If price breaks below, if so, you'd want to take your profit at if price breaks below 15436.04, right? So if price goes below that, you go in for a sell, of course, targeting the next support zone as your take profit. So this is indices, right? So it's quite volatile, and of course, if you're using a very good lot size, you should make quite a lot. So targeting okay, sorry about that. I believe you can all hear me now. Okay, so I don't know what happened to the network, it just went off. So for US 2000, same thing too in play. US 2000 is a very, very volatile instrument, and it also has a good profit per pip margin. So of course you'd want to Okay, so for US 2000, like I said, I'm going to be doing it on a 15 minutes time frame because of how profitable US 2000 can be, right? So dropping it